But a real big key is and this is very rare, but if you can actually find a situation where you see more upside that the broker doesn't see, that's when you have a home run in your hands, because largely the market's going to view the deal kind of how the broker views it. So everyone's bids are going to be coming in based on that body of knowledge. And if you have something else, that's how you win the deal.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, as always, Yona Weiss, and it is really a great day. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm excited to be talking with Rob Beardsley. What's going on, my friend?
Not too much. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I mean, Rob, you are what I would define as an up-and-coming star. If you're not already a star, I mean, someone who has acquired already over $100 million in multifamily assets in the past few years. At your age, it's nothing short of impressive. Because to see where you're going to be, I think I told this a few years ago. Like, to see where you're going to be in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, it's just it's incredible.
I appreciate that. That's very exciting. I got to keep re-raising the bar and motivating myself.
Yeah, you do. I mean, and you do. I mean, just to keep,
of course,
you do. So I can attest to that. But that's pretty awesome. So Rob, just to give you guys a little bit of context, he is a partner of Lone Star Capital. Their multifamily investment firm, focused mostly in the Southeast, Texas, most specifically. And he's also the author of an amazing book called The Definitive Guide to Underwriting Multifamily Acquisitions. If you haven't checked that out, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Make sure you pick one of those up. I mean, it is really a definitive guide to underwriting multifamily. And I think one of the things that impresses me the most is how you have such clarity. And I've seen a lot of your videos and a lot of your talks on different webinars and summits and things like that, where you literally, you got it down. I mean, you're focused mostly on the actual, underwriting of deals, right? And that's your main focus, I would say, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Amazing. So, I mean, how did you know that was for you? I mean, for me, just to give you a little, everyone knows that in real estate, you need to underwrite deals. You need to look at deals. You need to underwrite them. And everyone's got a little bit of a different process of how they go about doing that. Like, how did you know that was something you just enjoyed?
Yeah, well, getting into the business, like you just said, it's pretty apparent that it's a critical component. And for me, I naturally gravitated towards it because I kind of have a quantitative background, always was into math, numbers, went to school for computer science. So it was a pretty natural thing for me to gravitate to. Always hated English class, writing. I always preferred black and white answers, right? Did I get the answer right or wrong? And so with underwriting, it's not quite the same because there's a lot, actually, as you learn more and more about it and you learn all the rules and you learn how to break them and all that kind of good stuff. And so that's where, because truly, and like you said, I really appreciate it. My book is the definitive guide, yet it's about 100 pages. It shows you that at the end of the day, underwriting is not that complex. You can get it down, right? I say you put some effort into it in 6 months, you've got it. Mm-hmm. So really the next level beyond having it down is kind of treating it more like an art rather than a science, and being able to kind of see certain nuances and deal structures or business plans and not just simply take information in and put an output out. It's actually being able to craft the most appropriate plan, strategy, deal for that given opportunity.
Right. And I think that's so important, the way that you put that, because every deal is different, right? You may be underwriting one deal, you may totally different than another one. I mean, what are some of the factors that you would say are like the most important when you're looking at a deal that you can tell within like the first 5 minutes, even before you underwrite something, whether this is something worth pursuing or not?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and I get it a lot. So obviously, it's a good question that's on people's minds because people want the shortcut. They want to say, well, how do I figure this out in 5 minutes? And my take on that is it's actually pretty tough. I mean, even if you spend an hour, it's really tough to understand what's going on. So for me, if you only had 5 minutes, I would actually spend less time looking at the numbers and more look at the qualitative. I would look at things like the schools in the area. I would look at the median household incomes. I'd look at the population growth. I'd look at the historical rent growth. I would look at supply. I would get comfortable with all that qualitative stuff before I spend time trying to go and make the numbers make sense. Because once you have been doing it long enough, you can kind of figure out how to tweak things enough to start making a deal make sense. And that's a very dangerous power to have, right?
Right.
So you want to make sure that before you start going and messing around with the numbers and spending a ton of time, just is the foundational investment sound? So that's how it's been my first 5 minutes.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that. What would you say? I mean, what I find most interesting about this, and to be honest, I've spent time doing underwriting. I was never really good at math. I was never really good at Excel or any of that stuff. So it's not something that I appreciate a lot. And I mean, I do appreciate it, but it's not something that I enjoy. That's what I meant to say. But why is it that whenever I do look at deals, and I do quite often, but you always find, you have people talk about conservative underwriting, and everyone, is talking about conservative. Everyone's conservative. But the brokers that are giving the deal are like the exact opposite. And there's such a disparity between how you can look at a deal and say, I cannot make this work. Like I've tried, I've looked at it, I cannot make it. And the broker's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is such a good deal. Like, and you're not looking at X, Y, and Z. Like, how do you bridge that disparity between like the brokers, quote unquote, pro forma projections and trying to actually make a deal work with conservative underwriting?
There really is almost no bridge. There's no, I wish it were easier and I wish there was some solution, but people from all different backgrounds and angles and experience are shaking their heads at a lot of the stuff that's going out there. So there is no solution. Some people might offer, more leverage as the solution. Well, simply put a bridge loan on it and take on more debt. So that way you get higher levered projected returns. And, that's a solution, but there's really no good answer. It's not us usually trying to bridge the gap. It's us trying to just find a more reasonable opportunity. But a real big key is and this is very rare, but if you can actually find a situation where you see more upside that the broker doesn't see, that's when you have a home run in your hands, because largely the market's going to view the deal kind of how the broker views it. So everyone's bids are going to be coming in based on that body of knowledge. And if you have something else, that's how you win the deal. For example, we had a property under contract and it was just a perfect deal for us, checked all the boxes, and we were really excited about it. And then while under contract, the property adjacent came for sale just across the creek, just in the other street. And it was a smaller property, about 100 units. And because the property that we were buying next door was 200 units, that was already kind of more institutional size. You could staff it well with a couple of people in the office, a couple of people on the maintenance side. But a 100-unit property is always an awkward position to be in, because with 100 units, maybe you can get away with just a manager in the office. Maybe you end up having to have a manager in a leasing. So theoretically, with a 100-unit property, you might have to have the same staff almost as a 200-unit property. So it's an inefficient property from a staffing perspective, from payroll. But when we saw the property, the 100-unit for sale, we knew that everyone's going to be underwriting it based on whatever their payroll assumption is. But we're buying the property next door. Therefore, with fairly marginal additional payroll, we can manage that property. And we recognize the fact that that 100-unit property attracted a certain buyer and had a certain valuation given its size, right? Non-institutional size. But when we combine the two properties and make it 300 units, now we're talking about a $20 million purchase for somebody. And that is a big buyer pool with people paying higher prices and all that good stuff. So we saw that there was essentially a valuation arbitrage to be had there as well. So we were the only buyer that had that specific angle on the property. So as soon as that property came for sale, I knew it. And I called the broker. I said, we're your best buyer on this one. We're going to have this one. And we got it. So, that's a super rare. You can't really build a business around that. That's very impressive if you can. And that's just one angle, right? That's not the only angle. It could be, you are able to manage the property remotely, or so there's just unique ways that you can look at it. But that's one way I see bridging the gap. But usually you're right. Usually it's the brokers here, you're here, lenders here. It's all over the place.
Yeah, you can't really get a good grasp on a deal because everyone's looking at it from a different angle. And I think when you can see opportunities, like you said, and you described a perfect example. I remember Joe Fairless also giving a very similar example of a deal that he did where he literally had, was under contract and bought the property across the street. It didn't go out for sale, but I think that's a great strategy. Like if you have a deal, under contract, like look around and the neighboring, vicinity and see if you can convince a seller, an owner to sell. Just, it'd be great for you as well in that area. I mean, that's a great opportunity. I think the point you brought up about finding information or things about a deal that make it work that no one else knows. And that's kind of privileged information, but it takes a skill, right? It takes, like you said, more of an art more than anything else, because you're not just looking at numbers at that point. You're actually trying to, make things work from a different perspective. Have you ever had a deal that like went totally sour though? Like you thought it was a great deal and you underwrote it great, and then something like a monkey wrench just came and was thrown in the ring?
Yeah, I mean that definitely happens, and for the most part, and you want that monkey wrench to appear sooner rather than later, right? Obviously. So hopefully it's very preliminary before you're under contract, or just sooner the better. So for us, fortunately, I'd say most of our monkey wrenches have come up, prior to contract, which obviously saves us time, money, and reputational risk, as far as performing on a contract. But some common things, some common monkey wrenches that come to mind, especially for us, since we deal with older property, 80s, 70s, even 60s properties, is the construction of the asset. So for example, I remember one time we had a property that it was an early 70s property. So my mind instantly went to the Federal Pacific stab block breakers, which are electrical panels on the outside and inside the unit sometimes that were known to cause fires in the 70s. And it's kind of a big no-no for insurance companies. And, many 70s vintage properties have already had those replaced. And so I was told that this property didn't have them. And so, okay, great.
One less thing to worry about.
Yeah. And then I get on site and I'm walking through the buildings and I see there it is, the big FP, that sign of death, Federal Pacific. And I instantly called the broker. I said, you told me that there were no FP panels, and here they are. And what do we do about it? And so that caused a little bit of a wrinkle. But thankfully, and this is why insurance is such a crazy game, and that's why you have to leave it up to the professionals. But even still, they can drive you crazy. But it just depends on the day of the week. Some days, insurance companies just will not insure a property that has stab block breakers, and then for whatever reason, at this time, they were able to insure it, and it wasn't an issue. So we got lucky there. But now I'm being told that it is an issue because we're looking again at another property in Houston now that has stab blocks, and we have to budget, $200,000 to replace them all.
Wow.
So if you don't have that baked in, it's a huge monkey wrench.
That's huge. Yeah. No, that's a great example. Yeah. Things like that just come with the territory, right? You learn these things along the way because kind of a novice investor wouldn't even know to look at something like that or think about something like that, which is incredible because you see so many people trying to get in the game that they just really have no idea what they're doing and think they can play with the big boys, right? And get these kind of big deals with, they don't have the experience of little things like that, like looking out for these stab blocks. Like who would even, if you didn't know about that, you had to learn about it somewhere along the line. I hope that's in your book.
No, that's part 2. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as getting in the game, I think that's why it's so important to partner early on and maybe partner forever, just whatever your strategy is. But the better your team is and having people to lean on, so that way you can get things done faster, more efficiently, and with fewer mistakes is well worth it. So
how did you go about starting? Like, did you start out with partners? Like, how did you get involved in your first deal?
Yeah. So like many people, our very, very first deal was us, actually, my dad and I taking a back seat to a sponsor where we were primarily doing is, we pre-vetted the deal, underwrote it, got comfortable with the business plan, the sponsorship, and everything else. And then we raised some money from our network. And then that's how we participated in the GP to get kind of a seat at the table and experience the operations and the investor relations and all those components of it. So that's, like many people that start out kind of in that seat. And then, from there, we just really dove in and took a big one on, like you said, with the big boys. And we were definitely playing with the big boys at that point, and it was very stressful and we were out of our league, but it made us learn lessons very quickly. And so, Was it the most ideal thing? No, I mean, probably the ideal thing is to kind of ramp up more gradually and learn things better so you make less mistakes and things like that. But you can never predict when a good deal comes your way, right? Maybe you were hoping that good deal came and it was 5 million or 10 million, but what if a good $25 million deal comes? Are you going to turn it away? I hope not. Hopefully you can find a way to take advantage.
Yeah. I mean, did you start out with like smaller property, like single family? I think your dad was, did he come at the same time as you into real estate, or you guys were kind of came in together, or did you start with other? I think if I recall, your father was a broker for some time beforehand, right?
Yeah. So my dad ran a brokerage on the single family side in California. And so he was involved in some smaller commercial investments, and he has a construction development background, but all on the single family side. And so that was very beneficial in many ways, especially when you're talking about the network and having people that have trusted him and worked with him for many years. And just, all of a sudden we're doing multifamily and everyone says, yes, I'm ready to go. And that's a huge advantage. But at the same time, it was really fascinating to see both of us enter the business together, which is multifamily, because I didn't have the burden of previous experience, right? I had a clean slate. So he was, not that it held him back tremendously, but you could just see it was interesting. The verbiage is different. And so he's kind of saying certain single family slang and it doesn't go with the multifamily. And it was just, different perceptions about contracts, LOIs, hard money, and different things like that. So it's just kind of interesting. And I think similarly to kind of when we jumped in and did our first big deal, which was about 16 million, I was just so young and naive to think, oh yeah, I can just do this, right? Where if you have years of experience and life has kind of hardened you, you probably would be more reticent to just take a huge risk like that.
That's awesome. I mean, that is great. I mean, to see the difference between the two of you, but also coming together and partnering together. You still do deals together now, or kind of gone your own ways?
We do. Yeah, we do. So as you know, Kent and I are the partners of Lone Star Capital. That's my day job. That's my full-time pursuit. But, my parents are doing their thing. They're acquiring property and now looking at Tampa. So hopefully we can find, the next business plan over there.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's great to have family and the business together because you can always combine forces and you can help each other out. That's awesome. Amazing. So I want to transition now. This kind of the final, part of our podcast. But even before we do that, actually, I did have one more question before we go to the final four, which is, someone who is like me, who does not enjoy the underwriting process. I mean, you mentioned before, if you just plug away at it for about 6 months or so, like you'll be good, you'll get good at it. And I believe that to be true in terms of any skill. If you really just plug away and you focus on it, right? The whole 10,000 hour rule or whatever, maybe you can get away with that in 6 months, but probably more like 3 years. But regardless, would you recommend something like that for me, like your book? Would that be beneficial for someone who I know that I actually don't really enjoy the underwriting? And would it be something that I would actually get a lot out of?
Yeah, well, certainly you'll get a lot out of it. I can't promise you that you'll enjoy it. I did not write the book hoping to be entertaining. So that's a more of a tricky question. But certainly, part of the inspiration for my writing the book was to empower passive investors to underwrite, because I feel like I would say 99% of passive investors don't underwrite, right? And to me, that is just a mistake, because as a passive investor, all your work and effort is prior to actually funding the capital. That's what you have in your toolkit, is all the due diligence upfront. Once the deal's closed, you have nothing to do and you have no responsibility. So it's your responsibility then to put in all the work upfront. And in my opinion, that should include underwriting the deal, because you may not agree with all the sponsor's assumptions. That doesn't mean the deal is bad. It just means you should probably see what the deal looks like from your perspective and see, are you okay with the returns? Are you okay with the risk? And then make a decision from that standpoint, rather than just being fed numbers and trying to make a decision from there. I think also, if you're kind of on the fence about investing and you can actually plug in the numbers and see for yourself, I think that is a confidence inspiring situation, right? Because if this is a black box, you don't really know how the numbers work, but you read this book, spend the 6 months, like you said, and now you have confidence. Now I feel like you could really invest. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. 99% of passive investors do not underwrite deals because they're solely relying on the sponsors. I mean, to a certain extent, people like to think that they just putting their trust in someone and hopefully that they're doing the right thing. But in the end of the day, it's your capital, it's your risk. You really should understand things like that. But I don't know if I were doing that, and I have done that. Number one, I do put my trust in the sponsors that I passively invest with. But at the same time, I realized, hey, if I went all the way and did this, like I would have a lot more power and potentially I could do a lot of this on my own to a certain extent. Obviously, I can't. There's so many other factors to take down deals and to run deals, to manage and all that other stuff. But I think it would give a lot of empowerment to investors. So that's good to know. I'm definitely going to check it out now that you've said that. I've been hesitant because I know I'm not good at underwriting. It's not my forte. I like to focus on what I'm good at and what I like to do. But, I'm always interested in learning new things, and especially when it comes to managing risk and, my own money and own capital and things like that. So appreciate that. Appreciate the perspective.
Cool.
And looking forward to the sequel also. Well, the 4 questions, this is the final 4 questions I ask all my guests, Rob, which the first question is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
So when you asked me that before recording, the thing that instantly popped into my mind was when I worked at the Carnegie Mellon. It was called the Telefund. So basically, it was a call room where we called alumni or current students' parents, and we basically just asked for donations. And time never moved slower for me than in that room. I mean, you could do 1,000 dials in a shift, and it was really funny too because there was no real reason for me to take that job. It wasn't like, I don't know, it's not like I searched high and low and this was the best thing. It just kind of stumbled on, it just fell into my lap, but it turned out to be such a great opportunity, and everybody should go through essentially a sales cold calling experience in their life because it builds your, numbness to rejection, phone skills, persistence. I mean, it was a requirement by our manager to get 4 no's before hanging up.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy to look back and think about. So yeah, I did not enjoy that. I do not enjoy cold calling, and for that reason as well. But that actually reminds me, there's a great book when I first started in sales many years ago, which I did not enjoy at all. There's a book called Go for No. And it's all about the no's. It's all about, literally, it's like, the more no's you can get, you're closer to your yes. And it was a really interesting perspective on sales. It's a really short book. I think I read it in like an hour, like less than an hour. It's like a 40, 50 page book or something like that. But anyways, that just reminds me of that. Just go for the no. You want to get more no's, and that will help you sell. But yeah, I mean, it is a good experience because when you toughen yourself up to, face rejection, that spills over to everything in life, all kinds of interpersonal relationships and things like that. And the truth of the matter is, even if you're just doing underwriting, every job that you do, no matter what it is in this world, requires a certain amount of sales skills, regardless of what you're doing. And absolutely.
Yeah. And you learn that that's not something that you want to do, right? It's why you have someone else on the investor relations and the capital raising side of things. Yeah. So second question for you, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
So again, the instant thing that popped into my head was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That was something I read kind of towards the end of high school. And it was an interesting, pivotal time in my life because I essentially, up until that point, I had dedicated my life to football. And yeah, I mean, I was a good student. I had friends. I enjoyed these certain things, but football was the center of my life. And it was just always the dream I wanted to use football to get into an Ivy League school. I wanted to play college football. Who knows what I wanted to do, but my whole purpose was building that way. And, without making the story too long, but basically senior year, I transferred to one of the top teams in the state of California to try to really pursue a great senior run, get a championship. And I broke my hip like right before the season started. And it was just so devastating. I had never been more depressed. I didn't, not because I was unwell, but I just did not leave bed for, 5 consecutive days. It was just a horrible, miserable situation. And somehow, I guess the fracture was just small enough that it didn't need surgery. And I was going to be able to play in, 12 weeks. And 12 weeks is a lifetime when you're talking about a season, right? That's the whole season if it were right at the beginning, which we were pretty close. But somehow I was back running in 5 weeks or so. And I played, I think, the 4th game. I was back in. And so anyway, I'm taking too long in the story, but during my depression period, because basically everything was taken from me and I was brought to such a low. that it kind of allowed me to clear everything away and just be happy from within. And that's when I read The Power of Now. I started meditating every day. And I just I think that's when I became the happiest, because there was nothing but acceptance. I was in a situation that I could not change. I mean, it was incredible sitting on the bed, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't lift my right leg up. It was scary. But yeah, so that book was that big shift that you have to be happy right now. There is no pain and suffering right now. Everything is good.
Wow. That's incredible.
And we did win the San Diego championship.
Oh, all right. Congratulations. That's awesome. No, it's a great story, because it really just does show the power of the mind. And that's a great book to kind of put that perspective in, especially in that, such a situation like that. Don't wish it on anyone, but oftentimes situations where we're faced with challenges are those opportunities that really help us grow in ways we never would have been able to otherwise. So, we have to be thankful for those challenges also, even in the moment when it's painful. We have to look at it and see, that we can grow out of this, and at least in retrospect. Awesome. Third question for you is, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
So for me, I would like to really become a master of development, because right now we're focused on value add, buying existing properties. And I think development is just an amazing strategy to add to the toolkit, because to have that more diverse, eventually I want to learn everything, but right now kind of development is the hot topic. I think development's a great strategy today. And it's just great because, in certain markets, it's better to acquire property, and then in other markets, it's better to develop it. So having that versatility, I think, allows you to kind of be more of having an all-weather strategy. So I think that's exciting.
There you go. What's the first step in learning that?
Doing a deal, partnering with a developer, and just getting a seat at the table. Kind of the same thing on the value add side. Just doing whatever it takes to get into a deal, seeing the whole process around you, and then slowly but surely build the competencies to take care of more and more aspects of the deal until you can do it all yourself.
There you go. Well said. Excellent advice. There you go. That's wise advice for you.
I just need to take it.
The first step is hearing it, right? And you got to internalize it and then do it. But the fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, I like this question a lot. For me, it's really simple. Success is defining a goal, or defining a reality, and then closing the gap between your current reality and your desired reality. So that's it. That's success.
As simple as that. It really is. It can be on any single day, any single, tiny thing, big or small.
And honestly, I would take it a step further, because that was more of a destination-oriented answer. But as we all know, it's really all about the journey. So to make it an even better answer, it would be success is defined as actually closing the gap. It's not that you've closed the gap and have achieved it, because only a fool accomplishes his goals, right? Mm-hmm. You need to keep on raising the bar. So it's, as long as you're living your life on your bleeding edge and you're pursuing that reality, that success, that's what success is.
Awesome. Yeah. Continue raising that bar, continue striving for more. Awesome. Couldn't said it better myself. Rob, how can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they choose to?
So you can learn more about us at Lone Star Capital at lscre.com. On our website, we've got the free download of our underwriting model, which complements the book. Definitely want to do 2 and 2 together. Like you mentioned, you can check out my book, The Definitive Guide to Underwriting Multifamily Acquisitions, on Amazon. And feel free to reach out to me directly if you want to chat about anything further. My email is rob@lonestarcapgroup.com.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate you taking the time with us today, and enjoyed the conversation as always, and wish you much continued success in everything you guys are doing.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. And to our listeners, thanks again for joining once again on the Weiss Advice journey today. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.